How does a yogi develop new habits or spiritual habits? Or how do we go on to becoming a yogi? So these are very important things to understand. And many times, like we find that we have good intentions. We want to change habits. We want to do a lot of things. We want to do our yoga. We want to do our pranayama. We want to do maybe some, studying, listening, attending classes. But many times, we find that we are pulled away. We are not able to prioritize. We are not able to make time. Why? Because so this is we have different reasons. We can actually come up with different reasons, but in reality it is because we haven't developed the right habits. We haven't valued the habits, and we don't know how to develop these habits. So I called it habits, but from a more philosophical sense of yoga, it is called as samskaras. Developing the right samskaras. So now, how do we develop these right samskaras? Okay, so first, there are only two kind of actions that we do, or two behavioral tendencies we have. If somebody, for example, is used to waking up late, at if they wake up at let's say if they're used to waking up at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then they have to go for work or something, then obviously there's not much time for them to do any spiritual practices or yogic practices. So what happens now is that there are only two patterns we have. One is or rather, two behavioral options we have. One is that which is driven out of our habits, where we are more or less on a autopilot mode. We are unconscious. You know, the other is that which comes from our conscious intentions, what we call as sankalpas. You know, so now if you look at it this way, where there is no conscious intention, there is just automatic. We are on an autopilot mode. So most of our actions, are driven like this on an autopilot mode. Now, if this is something that you wanted to do, like if it is something like waking up early at 6, you have a habit of waking up early at 6, and then you sit for yoga, or you do your yoga, and then you do your meditation, then there's no problem at all. Or like, for example, Tuesdays, okay, I'm going to attend Swamiji's class. Then it's kind of automatically you do it. So then that is good habit. We want to reinforce that. But if it is not a good habit, then most likely what has happened is it has become an unconscious habit. It is not something that you have consciously chosen. So if you are used to, watching something on your phone before you go to sleep, rather than sitting down, reading some book or doing some quiet meditation, then what has happened is you have trained yourself that way. So the moment you sit on your bed, you automatically grab your phone or your whatever you enjoy. I mean, it's okay if you enjoy, but I'm saying that if it is not your conscious thing, then the first thing is we have to make it a conscious effort. We have to bring it into our awareness. So we can also repeatedly say in our mind, okay, I'm doing this, which is not helpful for me, which I don't want to do, which is not going to give me, it's not going to give me a positive state of mind. It's not going to help me. So now the first thing is, why do we do habits? The first question that we have to ask ourselves is, and I'm not going to address this. Of course, there's a lot from psychology and all that, and many of you might have already been familiar with that. See, the general psychological way of replacing one bad habit is to do a good habit. What is called as cognitive behavioral therapy or something, where you try to realize that this is not good for me and I do something good. Like I'm eating junk food, I should eat healthy food. So now here's the first thing. From a yogic perspective, You will only do that things which you identify yourself as, you know. So when we come into doing the yoga sadhana, or we are going to become a yogi, the first thing is we still identify ourselves as a samsari, meaning we still identify ourselves as a person who is driven by worldly habits. So I don't see myself as a yogi. Why I don't see myself as a yogi? Because, like I've for many years seen myself like this, right? I'm not used to seeing myself. So, this is one reason why when we take sannyasa and all, we change our clothes, we put on new clothes, because all our names change, everything. Why? Because the new identification altogether. So sometimes, like when you take diksha from some teacher also, even if you don't, sometimes they'll give you a new name. Even like, if you have if you are from another country, they'll still give you a new name, some Indian Sanskrit name. So why do we do that? Is because the new identity. So this is an old philosophical, spiritual philosophy. If your identity has changed, if you identify yourself as something else, then what happens is automatically you will disassociate yourself from all those bad habits. So the first thing is, what do we identify ourselves as? So to some extent, all these are helpful props, what I call like changing names, changing clothes, and, like for yogis generally, like for example, if you decide, sometimes there's a lot of people who wear white cloths, you might have seen. Why? Because white is also, in a way, it is a sign of purity. It's a color of purity, sattvic colors. So the wearing any of the sattvic colors, you are automatically identify yourself like that. So this is the first point, to remember that who we identify ourselves as is the kind of habits we will keep. Okay. Another way to put it in is that if you have certain habits which you're used to, if you're used to doing certain things, then those habits are what you will identify yourself as. So it's, both ways. So you identify yourself according to the habits you have, or if you have a strong affirmative identification with yourself in such a way, then you will automatically pick up habits accordingly. So this is the first thing, we have to remind ourselves, like once we decide that, okay, I'm a yogi or I'm a yogi-sadhak, if you don't want to call yourself yogi, you can always call yourself a yogi practitioner, yogi-sadhak. So then first thing you have to think is, what are the habits of a yogi practitioner? So basic, if not anything, is yama niyama, um, right living, not harming others as much as possible in thought, word, and deed, right diet, cleanliness, and all that. So these are all the habits of a yogi sadhak. So if we, for example, start doing something else, then immediately we have to remind ourselves, I am a yogi sadhak, and these habits are not helpful for me. So now you may say that, how do I call myself a yogi sadhak? And if you're working or active with something, see, being a yogi is not so much that you have to don certain clothes or you have to, have a new name or a follower of someone. It's a mindset and it's a feeling. If you feel and you associate yourself like that, that I want to improve myself. You don't necessarily have to believe in certain all the gods or all the philosophies. You just want to say, I want to improve myself, then you are a yogi. Why? Because a yogi is the one who has chosen to purify his mind. Yogi is the one who has chosen to improve himself at the highest level, just for the sake of finding that subtle, sublime joys of life. So Anyone who has this intention, they can identify themselves as a yogi. Okay. On the same hand, at the same time, you can also try to distill yourself. What is a yogi? What are the kind of a um, um, kind of a what are the qualities you feel a yogi should have, and those are the qualities you work towards. So this is a very kind of a practical ways to look at it, like what I was talking earlier of the two stages, what is called the purification or the development stage of practice. So that the first stage of that is to identify that I am on my path to becoming a yogi, or identifying myself as a yogi. So then automatically I start doing all the paths, all the practices, and start working on cultivating all those qualities. So much so that even I should be vigilant what kind of thoughts I keep having unconsciously, or what they say is even in a dream. I once heard, the current Dalai Lama. He shared some very useful insight, and he said that one time he had a dream. In that dream, he saw himself as I think some he saw himself as a monk, as a simple monk, not as like a Dalai Lama and all that, just as a simple monk. And then the next day, he was very happy about that. He shared that with a lot of people, saying that in my unconscious thing also, I think of myself as a simple monk. I don't think of myself as this Dalai Lama with this huge entourage. I don't know if you have seen, but usually there are a lot of people following him. So that is how deep our impression should be. That it should go into our subconscious. Okay, this is the kind of person I associate myself. I identify as myself. So, and this is also, they say, for all many popular gurus, like they also see, the main thing is that the goal is not to become popular guru and all, right? Goal is to be this having this right state of a yogi, of a spiritual practitioner. If you have that, then if that is so deep in us, then it's fine if you're popular and if you have all that. So that is again that identification we have of ourselves. So that is, we have to we it's good to also write it down and impress on our mind. And then at the more basic level, for the gunas, we have three gunas, right? Sattvic, rajas, and tamasic. We should try to kind of say that I am a sattvic person, or at least try to identify myself as a sattvic person. Then what happens? Then naturally, those things that are tamasic, I start disassociating myself from them. Things, habits that are not good for you, like smoking, drinking, or anything, or whatever is though you don't consider as sattvic, then you should not associate with that. So it's not that just to say that I will stop those habits right from tomorrow, because we know that sometimes the power of habits is so small. But mentally, I disassociate. I start saying that mentally that I don't need them. I'm actually more sattvic in my nature. So you can still be having some habits which are not sattvic, but you can mentally affirm that I am a sattvic person. Then slowly what happens, once that impression gets stronger and stronger, it starts influencing your behavior also. You know? So this is what it is. First is having that vision, as I say. Initially, it seems like you're faking it, but as they say, fake it till you make it, right? So you kind of use that kind of identity to help you. Okay. Um, so one more thing is, it's good to, if you can, associate with some tradition or teachers. This is the Indian way also, like I remember in my early days, like I associated with certain teacher and a guru. So I kind of always had this thing, I'm this guru shishya, or I'm this guru's disciple. So automatically, like I held very high respect for that guru. So that the disciple of that teacher, what is the rightful kind of attitude or behavior of such a person? I kind of kept reminding myself. And I slowly started seeing it, it started empowering me to overcome a lot of habits because by ourselves, sometimes, we don't have that power. I mean, we feel, especially when the habit is, our wrong habits are strong. It could be anything simple like not doing our practices or spending too much time on the phone. I especially like, unnecessary things on the phone or wrong eating habits. Like these days, people I notice like they're in the habit of constantly eating. We have this. Um, this is more like I happened to read something on how in our times these days a lot of our diet is very high calorie, which the body doesn't need. What has happened? The mind has made it a habit. So our ancestors were not used to eating so much, so regularly, so periodically. I actually hear sometimes, in our small towns here or villages, we see many of the dogs or stray animals. And you give them food, they will only eat when they're hungry. You know, many times you give them food like when they already have eaten something, and then you give them something else, they will not eat it. So instinctively, they know how much they need. Similarly, our body also, human body, it knows, how much it's. We have, cultivated this habit of false hunger alarms. Uh, Even when we are not hungry, there is like this mental craving we have. So we are eating based on our mental cravings. The food we like, we will take it anytime we want. So these are the habits, and so this is what I'm saying. First, we're not even conscious of it because everybody in the society does it. We are also used to doing it. Okay, so then one of the important thing is, see, habits. Why do we do habits? Is because there's some kind of an immediate gratification. I think we know from science, right? There's like a dopamine factor to that, and an immediate reward system. Whatever behavior you engage in, there's an immediate reward to that. Um, but on the other hand, if you really look at it, when we become subtle, we get tired of that. We get tired of um, um, our body kind of giving in to that every time because that indulgence drains us out. Like if for I just mentioned about this eating thing, right? Like if you're constantly eating, then what happens is our energy actually goes low because the digestion is slowed down. Your body is also not getting the necessary energy. There are 5 pranas in the body. All the pranas now are engaged only in one prana, which is a digestion prana. The other 4 pranas stops functioning for you. So you're not able to take the benefits of other physical activities. But so now what happens actually, see, one reason, because people have gone through these physical exhaustion and states of mental stress, when they come for these meditation classes or talks, or even if they do meditations or take retreats and all, right? What happens is they suddenly sense that there is something pleasant they experience. What is this pleasant is that they're actually experiencing their own true nature for the first time. We are used to putting all these false facades of to sustain ourselves, which we think we are sustaining ourselves. But what has happened is that this has become such a strong superimposition on ourselves. We have lost that connection with our true unhankering quiet state, which is our true nature. So what happens? We are constantly seeking for excitement, something to do, something that will keep us, mentally excited, engaged, and emotionally, physically. And so when we take a break sometimes, initially it seems hard, when people come into the mountains and all that here too, many people who are not spiritual also, if they just come to the mountains, they say, I love this nature. I love just watching what is happening is that you are disconnecting from all these false things that we have put on ourselves. Uh, and then we slowly start seeing this actually is much more engaging. And so when we can connect ourselves to that kind of subtle gratification, we are able to more quickly see how instantaneously we can get gratified. Meaning, if you just are able to sit and practice meditation or yoga, or even like attending some class like this, maybe you have to make time, and maybe initially it is hard and you're restless and all that. But soon you find that there is, if you're subtle enough, you will notice that subtle joys, subtle pleasures of engaging in this. And these are much, much more accessible. You don't need to engage in anything else. And these are more instantaneous, more available, more accessible. You don't need any money to buy anything. You don't have to go somewhere to get it. It's all right here, right now. So this need for immediate reward, can actually be fulfilled much more easily, only if we know the right ways to do it. So now a few few other things, like a few other points I will say, and then I will wrap it up. So see, the first other couple of points is when we want to start a morning meditation or morning yoga as a pranayama, whatever is your sadhana. So the first thing is that we have to make sure that it is not too hard to do. If you kind of make it like, okay, I will have to sit for 1 hour, and I have to put off other calls. I have to tell my other people not to disturb me, and so a lot of conditions, then it becomes very hard. So the first thing is keep it simple and keep it very easy. What I mean by simple is just take that you will get up and do 10 minutes practice. If that is, if you haven't been doing it. If you've already been doing it, then say that I will increase it to 15 minutes practice. So slowly, step by step, this is one of the best ways to start any sadhana, any new sadhana, or to increase or add on to your sadhana. Let's say you want to wake up early in the morning. Make it a point that morning, whatever it is, your phone is automatically turned off, or it's put on auto off or something. And you make sure you tell your family, your spouse and all that not to even disturb you. One of the things we do, in many ashrams and sadhaks is there's a silence period in the morning. You don't talk. So you can tell your family or people, like morning, for until I finish these practices, don't talk to me, or don't engage me in discussion. So what happens now? So now, your phone is not, you don't have to fight with your phone to avoid calls. You don't have to disengage. So it's kind of all set up for you. And the important thing is that now you have to just carry it out, whatever you're doing. And then you can help yourself if you want, like, if you feel that like you are used to having coffee in the morning, then just say that once I finish my asanas or my meditation, I will treat myself to my favorite tea, coffee, or whatever. But make that as a reward for having done your practice. So then what happens is that there is something else that is associated with your natural habit. But in order to gain that, you have to do something else. So the other way is actually if you feel impaired, you have no choice, you have to have your coffee, then still go ahead and continue and do whatever you had promised yourself to do. Because the mind will remember what you have promised. And if you break your promise, then the mind will say, okay, tomorrow also I can break my promise. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is like if you have told somebody, okay, there's another way to make your practice very satisfying. One is like, let's say you are able to do your yoga or your meditation, or even like now you attended this class. So you have taken time off and you've told somebody else that I'm not available for this time. Then towards the end of your practice, you can do something for them. You can, from your calm state of mind, you can say a prayer for them, or you can like a mental act of dedicating the results of your spiritual efforts to them. If not, if you want a more tangible way, then you can also, after your practice, call them and share some insight with them, something positive or something that is of inspiration to them, something that might help them in their problems. Because what has happened is once you have done your practices, you have gained a subtle and positive state of mind. And with that state of mind, you are in a better position to help others. So the what happens with this is you also feel immediately rewarded, and they will also be more supportive of you. So don't wait to become a full-fledged realized yogi. So this is to feel rewarded. You can, in a small and simple ways, try to reward yourself. So again, this is what the points I'm sharing here are for that those of us who are in this development stage of practices. In this development state of practices, what is happening is we have to inculcate these habits. We have to put in these habits. Studying, reading, good books, spending time listening to talks. And here again, sometimes we say that you get a lot more out of listening to one teaching or one teacher or a set of teachers that you are more connected with than trying to listen to anything and everything. So that is also much more on a long-term rewarding for you, much more helpful. Okay, so these are some of the points. The most important thing is getting our priorities right. Many times, people wait until a lot of stress happens in their life, a lot of difficulties comes in their life. You know. So this is why we say, like the wise are those who see the suffering of others and then kind of wonder that this could also happen to me or to my family. So before that happens, I will do something proactive. And this was the thinking of Buddha. He didn't wait for things bad to happen to him. He was having a very good life. He was having a very peaceful, very secure life. But he saw the insecurity, of death, disease, of sickness, old age. And proactively, he wanted to get the solution for that. And so this is what is the conscious way. So the conscious way is to rephrase our thinking. What is happiness for us? I saw this when I was for a few weeks. I had gone down to a city, here in India, and I noticed like many people are caught up with a lot of activities. They were so busy. And of course, I've been here so many years, so I hadn't seen the difference. Many times, people would say that, I would want to come meet you, or I would want to learn some things from you. And, uh, or some lot of good intentions. But they have swamped one with a lot of things. But at the same time, I also saw for many of them that was their priorities. It is not like they couldn't make time. It's almost like like they had convinced themselves that this is how life is. And so meeting or learning something spiritual from somebody, it's like a, it's so it's actually surprising to one extent when I look from a spiritual angle for more or most of us who studied in ashrams or who sought teachers, because when we saw a teacher who could fulfill us, we would drop everything and go there. That was how the priorities we had. Um, it's not like we didn't have other things. We also had a lot of other things. But the moment we saw that some teacher had come or was available to teach us, we would drop everything and go. So this is a change in perspective. And of course, it's based on environment. If you, I'm sure, like those of you who live in cities, you know very well. The environment is like that. Things are like that. It seems like that is the most important thing. But as one famous teacher said, when the time of death comes, all your appointments are going to get cancelled. so so that is how it is. So we don't realize until that comes. We have all these things we are so preoccupied with, they'll automatically be cancelled. So this is why the earlier we wake up and the earlier we are able to prioritize, we are then able to. What happens is the person who has made his efforts. This is what Bhagavan Krishna assures Lord. Lord Krishna assures Arjuna. Swalpam alpasya dharmasya trayato mahato bhayat. Even if you do a little bit practice, spiritual practice, it is not going to go waste. At the time of your greatest need or fear, which is that point of death, you or somebody who you can actually be of help to them at that point. Even if you've done a little practice, it will go with you. It is not going to get wasted. In that sense, it is not like, at that time of death, it's all good to get zero. At least in the yogic system, we don't believe in that. Why? Because this patterns which you have gained, and this we see in the first sutra of the Kaivalya Pada, fourth chapter. The first sutra he says is people have gained the siddhis either. First thing he says is by birth. How is it some people have gained this siddhis or this interest from birth? Why is it some people have it? Why is it some people don't have it? And this is because if you have practiced in one life, it's what it's gonna. And our idea is not that we'll have to be reborn and all that. In this very own life, we can achieve this realization stage, the completion stage of the practice.